On spirituality from the Indian Vedic tradition. Before I start, I'd like to ask you a question. When you consider the relationship between science and spirituality, so what do you think is the nature of the relationship? Are the two going in the same direction, opposite direction? If same, how? If opposite, how? Or are they completely unconnected? What do you think of as the relevance or relationship, science in your life, spirituality in your life, and how the two might relate harmoniously or disharmoniously? It's a complicated question, but I hope you got the direction in which I was going to talk about. Any thoughts, anyone?
I think spirituality is undiscovered science.
Spirituality is undiscovered science. So there is an aspect of reality that we have not yet come across.
Yeah.
That's a good way of looking at spirituality. Thank you. Anything else? Yes. If you would want to talk about your spirituality, say, with your colleagues or with your friends, co-students, what might be the typical response they might have? Would they have any questions, concerns, objections, or appreciation, whatever? So, what are the dynamics of the relationship?
Spirituality is usually perceived as very subjective, whereas science they call it very objective. Everyone measures the same temperature, pressure, etc. in science, but spirituality, it seems different people look up to different truths.
Yes, so spirituality is objective, science is subjective. Yeah, right. Okay, so deliberately did that. Anyway, anything else? Mm-hmm.
I think science talks about what happens outside of us, while spirituality focuses on what happens within us.
That's a good way of looking at it. So science focuses on externals. Spirituality focuses more on internals. Yes. Thank you. The way I often put it, science makes things better. Or science can make things better. Spirituality can make people better. It becomes an inner transformation. So that's true. Thank you. Anything else? So any other areas of possible tension or conflict or disharmony?
So I also find this feedback from people who might science is more probably material and spirituality is perceived as anti-matter or something which is...
So science focuses on matter.
Yeah, which is realizable or something.
It's more tangible matter, you can say.
Yeah.
And spirituality, it's like, what does it focus on? It is sometimes a question. Yeah. Good point. It focuses on something, but what exactly is? Science is much more tangible. Yeah. Anything else? Okay. So, thank you for sharing this. You have something in mind? Okay. So broadly, when we talk about science and spirituality, I'll take this in three broad parts. First is, what are the similarities? Then I'll talk about what are the dissimilarities. And then we'll talk about broadly the harmonization, or is there harmony possible or synergy possible? What exactly is possible? So when we talk about science, generally science is said to have two categories to it. So that is, there is some postulation of some theory, and once the theory is postulated, then there is some experiment done which can either prove or disprove the theory. So for example, I was in London, UK a couple of months ago. So when we went to Cambridge, we passed by the tree the place where Newton was supposed to have been sitting, and then that apple fell on him. That's what the legend goes. So now apparently that particular tree has become a sanctified tree. I mean, people go over there and it's like a pilgrimage place for scientists. You seek inspiration over there. In fact, many universities have what they call as a replica or a descendant of that tree. They call it the Newton tree. So we have in IISc also. Okay, very good point. So anyway, so then now when the apple fell on him, he thought, what made the apple fall? And he came up with an explanation. Now once he came up with that explanation, then there was an exploration of that explanation through experiments. And eventually an answer came out. This is the theory of gravity, and that seems to work. So spirituality also has two aspects to it. One is philosophy. And philosophy gives us postulates about the nature of reality. We will talk later about the dissimilarities, but let's focus on the similarities right now. It gives us postulates about the nature of reality. And then there is practice. There are certain practices that are recommended. And through those practices, we can get experience or realization of the truths that are postulated by the philosophy. So in one sense, through theory and experiment, what we get is confirmation here. This is what it is. Through philosophy and practice, what we get is realization. So it's somewhat similar. These two distinct items are there in science and spirituality both. How another similarity is that both arise from curiosity. And both are seeking answers. Science is a search for understanding. Spirituality is also a search for understanding. I'll talk a little later about the difference between spirituality and religion. But Einstein is said to have said, there are many statements attributed to him, and how many of them are actually coming from him, that is questionable. But this statement at least is among the statements that seem broadly reconcilable with the other kind of statement that he has made. So he is said to have said that the sciences, the arts and the religions are all fruits of the same tree of the human search for understanding. So basically, we all look at the world, look at the reality around us, what we observe, and we try to make sense of it. And there are different ways of making sense of it. So science and spirituality, he used the word religion over there. But that whole thing is, we are looking for understanding. So in that sense, science and spirituality share some significant similarities. Now, one more similarity which is increasingly emerging is that even science is increasingly proposing that what is visible is much smaller than what is invisible. So, in science, we start from visible reality. Newton saw the apple falling, felt the apple falling, depending on whatever version of the story we accept. But from there, he proposed an invisible principle, that is gravity. Now, most scientific theories or laws, they are invisible. They are explanations of visible phenomena. In many ways, the what makes our science so powerful is not the visible observations. It is the invisible principles that help us make sense of those visible observations and thereby tap into certain technologies, tap into those laws, principles through the means of technology. So in many ways, now when we use the internet, it's invisible. So the invisible reality is far more significant than the visible reality. And as we have, so we can talk about laws, then we can talk about much of the technological mechanism. The internet is not visible. Then we can also talk about the whole phenomena of dark matter and dark energy. This is not visible. If we go down to subatomic particles, atoms themselves are not visible, but subatomic particles are even more so. And all these have a huge amount of significance. So the atoms are not visible, but an atom bomb, the amount of power within an atom, it's stunning, shocking, sobering. So the invisible reality, whatever it is, that matters much more. That is bigger than, and it has greater significance than the visible reality. So this is, sometimes we often talk about science is based on seeing is believing. But that's an oversimplification of science. Seeing is important definitely in science. But after seeing, there is postulation. And that, what is invisible, again, we can confirm it. So in one sense, if it's a scientific journey, science, how it goes is we go from the visible to the invisible, and then we come back to the visible. So the visible is initially the observation. The invisible is the theory. The visible is the experiment. Now, within science itself, there has been this tension between rationalism and empiricism. Empirical methods of observation, that is basically what we observe. So empiricism focuses more on tangible realities, and they are the primary. Rationalism focuses more on math and laws. Okay, this theory is mathematically postulable. That it is, we can phrase it in the language of mathematics. So what happens is this, now empirism and rationalism is a theory that makes sense. A theory, specifically rationalism generally talks about logic, but in the language of science, and rationalism as it is used in that direction is not just something, a theory that makes sense, but also a theory that can be spoken in the language of math. So now Newtonian physics brought both of these together fairly well. That the visible, invisible, visible. But there was a huge tension at the start of the 20th century between empiricism and rationalism. So to a large extent, the theories that came, especially quantum physics. Now quantum physics is very difficult to make any empirical sense of. Einstein, now this is, he has said, not said to have said, here, he said, he was mocking quantum physics, and he said, I would like to believe that the moon continues to exist if I'm not looking at it. Now what he meant by that is, according to quantum physics, at least according to some interpretation of quantum physics, is the presence of the observer that actually determines the observed reality. I'm giving a very bare bones explanation over here, and I don't want to go into the theories. The point I'm making is that science, so the quantum physics, it's very difficult to correlate the model of reality that is given by quantum physics with our lived experience, with our sensory experience. And yet it seems to work. Much of the technology that we use is based on quantum physics. So in one sense, which is to be considered more important? Is the invisible or the visible? So somehow there is some relationship, but that relationship is not so easy for us to figure out. But overall, the invisible reality does matter substantially in science. And as science is advancing more and more, it seems to be postulating more and more invisible realities. So now, spirituality also says that that the invisible, there's a visible side of us and there's the invisible side. And the invisible reality is of greater significance. So the visible reality, say, could be the body. The invisible reality is the soul. The visible reality could be the world. The invisible reality is the divine. Whatever name we use for the divine. So now the soul may not be physically bigger than the body, but the soul is of greater significance. So now we could say, who has seen the soul? That's fair enough. We could talk about that in a separate session. But the point we're making is, this is a postulation that there is the invisible which is considered more important. And this is a very striking similarity that when we think of spirituality as talking about intangible things, but science also moves from tangible to intangible. And the more the science advances, the more it works in the intangible domain. So then after that, we could say that science gives us results in the form of technology. And for most people, their faith in science, some people say there's no requirement of faith in science. Science is just about truth. We'll talk about that a little later. But that whatever they have faith in, or the credibility that science has, comes from the working of technology. So there is something, okay, there are scientists talk about different theories and this mechanism, that mechanism. But we see the result. We see mic is working, my phone is working, the planes are working. So it is technology that mainly gives credibility. Now in spirituality also, there is philosophy and then there is practice. And the practice gives some experience. So for most people, the credibility for philosophy, for spirituality, now both of these together are spirituality. So the credibility for spirituality primarily comes from the result. So the result is experience. Now for spirituality, you could say there are, in the Western world is categorized as, there are two kinds of spirituality, or two, not kinds, but two kinds of focus on spirituality. There is philosophical spirituality and there is pragmatic spirituality. So what do we mean by this? Philosophical spirituality focuses on the claims, the truth claim that there is a soul, that there is a God. But pragmatic spirituality focuses on, okay, if these are there, how does that make a difference in my life? So for example, in the Western world and even in India now, especially in some part of India, meditation is becoming very popular. Now, and there are many scientific studies which do seem to suggest that there are tangible benefits coming from meditation. So the point what we are making over here is, the invisible is bigger than the visible, but the invisible affects the visible in tangible ways. So science, the theories are invisible, but the visible effect is technology. So the concept of the soul and the concept of God or any kind of higher spiritual realities, they are invisible, but is there a tangible effect of that? So the tangible effects are being seen. So meditation or any kind of spiritual practice, the effects are being seen increasingly in terms of mental health. Many people may not necessarily believe in any particular higher reality, but they find if I practice some meditation, I seem to become calmer. I seem to become more centered, more grounded. I can face emotional turbulence with greater steadiness. I travel across the world, and especially in Silicon Valley, there are many companies which invite monks to give talks, and in Salesforce they have a whole floor for mindfulness meditation. And during office hours, if an employee feels stressed, they can go and meditate. Other places also are increasingly having things like that. The idea is, It is not that the company Salesforce or Intel or whatever, they believe in the idea of a soul or they believe in the idea of a divine. For them, the thing is two things: the productivity and the health costs, the health insurance. So they find they find that if our employees do something like meditation, do practice of mindfulness, then they are able to be more productive and their health overall seems to be better. So there is some pragmatic effect which is being increasingly seen. So mental health is improved, and even there are indications of physical health being improved. Now yoga is becoming increasingly popular, and it now there is some amount of study and scientific research about how yoga benefits the body, but it's not a very extensive body of research about how a particular asana can lead to a particular healing effect. But the experience of people itself is so strong. This works, and it's being adopted very widely. So the thing is that if we are looking from pragmatic perspective, the invisible has visible effects. Now those visible effects are also being more and more vindicated. Say for example, through brain science. Now through neural imaging, when studies of people who do meditation are done, find that in the brain, the crosstalk, the neural crosstalk that causes distractions, that substantially decreases among people who meditate. So there are some visible effects. Now we can say brain states are not visible, but at least the brain images, the images are to some extent visible. So the invisible affects the visible. So there are some these broad similarities between science and spirituality. Both have the two dimensions to them. Both propose that there is an invisible reality, and the invisible reality affects the visible in ways we can see and in ways that can benefit us. Now, so we'll go to second part. What is the second part? Anyone remembers? That is similarities. Yes. So now the dissimilarities. Some of you mentioned it already. That is, it is firstly in the domain of study. So science is the study of matter. Spirituality is the study of what matters. Science is the study of matter. Spirituality is the study of what matters. Now, what is really important in life? What counts? If you study the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna had at that time his version of technology. Now, he was expert in archery. So he did not study the Bhagavad Gita we did not seek the wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita from Krishna to get a better understanding of archery. When he had to fight a war against his relatives, he wanted to know what really matters in life. What is important? So spirituality is the study of what matters. So there's another sacred book called the Srimad Bhagavatam. There a king is cursed to die in 7 days. And then he wants to know, okay, if I have only 7 days remaining, what should I be doing? What really matters in life? Now, when we say the study of what matters, we may say spirituality is simply the study of spirit. But it's not that simple. It is the study of what matters. Now, at one level, we can say things matter. I need food to survive. We need a home to live in. We need clothes to wear. So things matter. And that's definitely true. And science works through technology to improve things. Now, in many ways, technology has dramatically transformed the world around us. And the amount of improvement of physical things is sensational. We have an extraordinary level of comforts and utilities, facilities, conveniences. We have a lot of comforts. At the same time, somehow, we have not become happier. One of the promises, spoken and unspoken, of science and technology was that it will make us happier. The more we progress through science and technology, the more things become better, our life will become better. But what we have found is that things do matter. However, thoughts matter even more. And somehow, while our physical facilities have improved through the advancement of science and technology, somehow our mental health has not improved. Now, I'm not saying here that science and technology are responsible for the non-improvement or the degradation of mental health. I'm just saying that two did not happen together. So the irony is that because mental health has not improved proportionately, rather it has gone down. So what has happened is distress, misery has increased. So the result of this is the irony of our times, that we are today comfortably miserable. We are comfortably miserable. We may be living in an AC house, but we may be in anxiety. We may be sweating not because it is cold, but because we are in stress. So seems to be something missing over here. So over a period of time, we started realizing that improving things is important, but more important than our things are our thoughts. Our thoughts matter even more. So I may be eating delicious food, but if while eating delicious food, I am thinking about how someone has hurt me, or I may be eating delicious food and I am thinking, why did the server give that person a bigger helping than they gave me? Then, although the food that I have is delicious, but I won't taste it. Somebody might be tasting a sweet delicacy, but it may taste like sand to them. Our experience is determined not just by things that we have, it's also by the thoughts that we have. So, the domain of spirituality is the study of what matters. Now, you could say the thoughts matter more than the things. And spirituality is about improving the quality of our thoughts. See, there is the standard of living, that is a standard parameter of progress. Yes, I was living in a smaller house, now I'm living in a bigger house. I was driving a small car, now I'm going to drive a bigger car. That's standard of living. And it's important to improve that. But what matters is our standard of longing. What am I longing for in my life? Somebody can be wealthy and still be needy. If they're wealthy and they're craving, that person has more wealth than me. I have got a mansion, but that person has got a bigger mansion than me. Then, if the standard of longing is such that can keep them, they may be wealthy and yet they may be needy. So, if our desires, if our emotions, if our thoughts, all that happens in our inner world, that is misdirected, that is disharmonious, then what we do in terms of improving the things with us, that is not really going to make that much of a difference. So in terms of domain, it is spirituality is, okay, what really matters for me? And slowly we start going inward. So we start with the thoughts matter, but then we go deeper and it is the thinker that matters. So what do I mean by thoughts matters? Meditation, as I said, is becoming increasingly popular, or at least increasingly appreciated, because of its beneficial effects. But there is a reductionistic approach that can be used for everything. So, for example, I said earlier that the brain states that result when there is meditation are indicative of a calm mind, of a mind with the neurons and the synapses, all the firing is dendrites, the firing is happening in such a way that the person's focus is more. So now there have been attempts. Have any of you heard of a meditation helmet? No. So what the researchers are trying to do is the multi-million-dollar grants are given for this. That can we put on a helmet, and that helmet has electrical probes and electrical circuitry going on, current going on, and that will stimulate our brain in such a way that it will replicate the state of meditation. And that way, without going through the process of discipline and focusing, we can get our brain into a meditative state. So now, see, there is a fundamental problem with this approach. The problem is that we say often put the cart before the horse. The idea is that there is cause and there is effect. So what is happening over here is that when we talk about meditation, or before that, even we talk about emotions, as science is advancing, we are beginning to realize more and more that the world of science and the world we live in and for, they are not the same. They overlap, but there is a significant difference. The world we live in and for is the world of experience. We want to experience love, we want to experience joy, we want to experience connectedness, belonging. We want to experience these things, but none of these actually fit very neatly into the world of science. So let's start with something simple. So we all want to eat good food. Now we want to experience taste. But with all the advancement of science, we cannot make a tastometer. Now, science can advance remarkably. Science can tell us what are the ingredients within this particular food item with extreme precision. But taste is an experience. We can't replicate that. We can't reduce that to a device sensing it. Or for that matter, medical science has advanced incredibly now. One of the purposes of medical science is to help people manage their pain or hopefully remove the pain. But with all our scientific advancement, we cannot have a painometer. See it? Science can tell us, maybe through neural scans or through X-ray, okay, your bone is really hugely misaligned. You must be in a lot of pain. But how much is the pain? We can say on a scale of 10, how much do you feel is your pain? 1, 2, 5, 7, 8, 10, whatever. But that's just again subjective. We are asking the person on a scale of 10, how much is the pain? But there is no objective parameter to measure pain. Nowadays relationships are becoming so unstable. It causes people a lot of vulnerability and insecurity. Every millennia or every century, people have had different fears. So in the current century, among the top 10 fears of people, 2 fears have come up. One is the fear of terrorists, and the other is the fear of rejection. That we are entered into a relationship, the other person just rejects us, abandons us. Now, when we want to have a relationship with the other person, we would like to know, does this person really care for me or not? Say a boy proposes to a girl, I love you, please marry me. Girl says, wait a minute, I will take out a love-o-meter. I'll put it on your heart. Let me see, do you really love me? Now, love is one of the most fundamental experiences that we all seek. We all want to love and be loved. But that cannot be measured by science. Now, does that mean it's not real? It's what we live for. It's what we seek. See, the world we live in and the world we live for, that is quite different from the world of science. They are related, no doubt. But still there is a significant difference. If you consider the world of science, primarily in terms of the language of math and measurement and quantification. So experience itself is subjective. And all sensory experience, leave alone any kind of spiritual experience, taste, fragrance, all these are subjective. We can't really measure them. So the world of science, to the extent we think it's objective, there is a problem over there. So if we look at it from this perspective, I was talking here about the standard of living and the standard of longing, going from things to thoughts. Now we can say we look for experience and things give us experience. Yes, there is truth to that. But still, experience is a reality in itself, which matters for us substantially. So now where exactly does that experience come from? Now we can say that two people eat the same food, one person likes it very much, another person doesn't like that much. It's nice. Now, nice is a nice way of saying it is not great, isn't it? So now, it's the idea is that experience is a reality in itself. So when I was talking about the meditation helmet, what we are trying to do is, meditation is an experience. So it's like there is the brain states are there. Now beyond the brain states, there is the experience that we have. Now the experience leads to the brain states. But when we are trying to have something like a meditation helmet, what is the underlying assumption is that if you can replicate the brain states themselves are the experience. That if you just get the brain states, you'll get the experience. But it's not that simple. It's say that when a young mother sees her small baby and she feels a upspringing of love for that baby. Now, is that love just the secretion of some chemicals and the activation of some electrochemical signals in the brain? Well, there is something to that. But is that all that there is? Now, the question here is that ultimately electrochemical signals are flowing in this mic. They are flowing in the television set, if you're watching a TV. They are flowing in a phone. So, where exactly is the difference? Now, I'm not going to go into the specifics of the whole idea of neuroscience and the origin of consciousness. The point I'm making is that there is when we look for spirituality as a study of what matters, then things matter. But why things matter is that we hope that they will give us some experience. If I have a large house, then I will feel a sense of success. I'll feel a sense of security. I'll feel a sense of pride, whatever we want. Now, these are subjective things, but these what matter for us. So, the things lead to thoughts. Now, the theory within spirituality is that thoughts don't just come from a thing. They come from a thinker. who is separate. So now the thoughts can be triggered by the things, but there is a conscious person. So that's why if thoughts were, who is ultimately the source of the thoughts? Otherwise, if simply things were producing the thoughts, then two people eat the same food, they feel the same way. They should feel the same way. It's not that simple. So the idea is, when we think of spirituality as the study of what matters, then gradually we can move from things to thoughts, and from thoughts to the thinker of those thoughts. And that is how spirituality takes us toward spiritual reality. So things are matter, or we can say gross matter. Thoughts are associated with the mind, and a thinker is associated with the spiritual side of us, the soul. So the study of what matters gradually takes us towards spiritual reality, towards the soul, and it can take us ultimately towards divinity. That's not what I'll go into right now. But spirituality is the study of what matters. And for us, when we study science, and science, there is enormous intelligence and creativity that has been exercised by scientists. And as I said, we have got phenomenal insights into the working of the universe, as well as technology, which has brought phenomenal gifts. But the point is, in many ways, has the advancement of science helped us to become happy? It does seem that that has not really happened. It has made things convenient, it has made things comfortable. But convenience and comfort have not necessarily translated into happiness or wellness. So, in terms of spirituality, the domain becomes different because we move towards what matters. Now, there is a notion that science deals with facts and spirituality deals with feelings, and then it deals with faith ultimately. So science deals with facts and logic or reason. Science deals with rationality, and spirituality deals with feelings and faith. While it might be tempting to make this kind of categorization, reality is not that simple. Science just deals with facts and reason, but science also involves faith. Now, faith is involved at many levels. I'll just talk at three main levels over here. The first level that faith is involved is that when we propose a theory, we observe something and then we propose a theory. Okay, this observation can be explained through this pattern. Now you can say theory can be proven or disproven. That's true. But when we propose a theory, that's an act of faith. So now some theories, for example, the Large Hadron Collider was developed to discover what was called the God particle and some other things. Now sometimes to even verify a particular theory might require an experimental setup that requires millions and billions of dollars. So then that theory, even when you want to experiment it, it's an act of faith. So when we postulate a theory and then we conduct an experiment, we create a setup for the experiment. So all this requires faith, because the postulating theory is just an intellectual idea. But then setting up an experiment requires cost. And there is an exercise of faith over there. Then after that, as I said, as science has advanced, what has happened is we started realizing that there is an invisible reality. And the invisible reality matters. So science requires a fundamental faith that our senses are trustworthy. Because science begins with observation, science functions through experiments. But for making observations, for dealing with experiments, we have to assume that what our senses are telling us correlates with reality. Now, are our senses trustworthy? Now, we all know that there are areas where our senses mislead us. We have example of mirages, which is a very common example. But we have example of refraction. And there's so many other areas where science itself tells us that our senses are not trustworthy. So the assumption that our senses give us, they are reliable tools for understanding reality. That's the act of faith. Now we may say that faith is vindicated because, if my eyes show that you are here and I go and slap you, you slap me back, you are real. I can conclude that. So the idea is that we can say that there are ways in which that faith can be proven. But how far can I go? That actually speaking, there are some things which I can see you, I can verify that you are there. But when we look above and we see the sky. Now we know there's nothing like a sky. So how do we know that? We know through our intelligence. But then we are making experiments. So we may prove through the scientific progress which observations from our senses are not reliable and which are reliable. But underlying doing all this is the assumption that the senses are real. Senses are reliable. This is, in philosophy, this is called the doctrine of realism. Realism means what our sense, that first of all, there is a reality out there and our senses can give us perception of the reality. Now, another big article of faith in science is uniformism. Uniformism is the idea that the laws of nature that we infer based on our observations, they apply across space and across time. That the same laws will apply in the Andromeda galaxy, or they will apply in the far reaches of the universe, or these same laws will apply at the start of the universe, however the universe started. Now, of course, we know whatever theory, Big Bang or whatever variant of it we use, were the laws of time, laws of the universe applicable at the same time, or when did they start getting applied? So uniformism is not a theory that we can either prove or disprove, because unless we go to the farthest reaches of the galaxy and we do similar experiments over there, how do we know that? So that's why, especially when science starts going towards the question of origins, it becomes a little more tenuous. Its claims, because we are making a lot of assumptions over there about how things came about. We are assuming that these laws apply at that time, that space. So science also requires faith. Now this does not mean that science is not a rational endeavor. Definitely rationality is there. But faith is required in science. Now spirituality is about feelings and faith. But that does not mean spirituality, the philosophy aspect of spirituality often has reason within it. That if we postulate that there is an invisible reality called the soul, there is an ultimate reality called the divine or God, there are rational arguments to be made. Now those rational arguments, somebody might refute them. Whether they are irrefutable, that's a different question. But it is not that the spiritual domain is only a matter of faith. There is rationality in it. So, for example, if we practice meditation and we experience some benefit from it. When we experience a benefit, there is a rational explanation to it in the spiritual domain. The rational explanation is that there is a changing world around us and there is an unchanging core within us. So as long as we focus on the changing, our mind stays restless. We become agitated. But meditation connects us with that which is unchanging. And when we connect with the unchanging, then we calm down. Like if I am in an ocean, there are continuous waves over there. and I am swimming over there. With the waves, I'll move up and down. Now, if there are giant tsunami-like waves, then I'll be tossed up and down. Now, small waves, I can keep myself calm. I can keep myself steady among small waves. But huge waves, I cannot keep myself calm. So what spirituality tells us is that at such times we cannot stop the waves, but there can be an anchor. And if we hold on to the anchor, then we can stay steady. So the anchor that enables us to hold on to that is meditation. So the point I'm making is spirituality has rational explanations. So this does not mean, of course, see, spirituality has two aspects to it. There is a rational aspect to spirituality and there is a mystical aspect to spirituality. But so mystical means there are things which are sometimes not easily explainable by rationality. But all of spirituality is not simply about the mystical. Oh, I saw some light and I felt like this and I felt like that. There are some experiences, mystical states of awareness and all that. But there is a rational side to spirituality also. And it's quite prominent. It is not at all insignificant. So to simply say that spirituality is about our faith and feelings, it's not that simple. There is spirituality which talks about rationality. And yes, so I'll make two last points over here. That there is religion and there is spirituality. So we are talking here about the last dissimilarity, and finally I'll talk about the harmonization. So quite often for people, some people use the word spirituality and religion almost interchangeably, but some people make a categorical difference between the two. Have any of you heard this word SBNR? SBNR? No. Spiritual but not religious. So there is a large demographic of people who want to distance themselves from religion. They say, I want to be spiritual. So now, at one level, words have certain senses to them. Now, whenever we talk about words, they have denotations. Denotations means this is what they denote, what they mean. But they also have connotations. Connotations is what they symbolize. The mood, the tone that they bring. Some words have a negative connotation. And if they have negative connotation, then we don't want to use that word. Some words may have a racist connotation, some words may have sexist connotation. So then such words, we try to avoid them. So religion has to some extent, in some circles, acquired a negative connotation. So the idea is that for many people, spirituality is about openness. I want to be open to new experiences. I want to experience something higher, something deeper in my life. For many people, for them, religion seems to be about narrowness, narrow-mindedness. And this is what you should believe, this is what you should do. And that's all there is to it. So often people think that religion leads to fanaticism. It leads to extremism, radicalism. It leads to violence. In contrast, their idea is if you become more spiritual, then you become more compassionate, you become more forgiving, you become more kind. So for many people, spirituality and religion, they seem to be quite different. That's why they say, I want to be spiritual but not religious. Now the thing is that when I said spirituality has two aspects to it, anyone remember the two aspects? Philosophy and practice. Now, when we talk about the practice, over time, this practice becomes systematized and codified. So then, when it becomes systematized and codified, that becomes a religion. That basically, I want to experience something higher. Philosophy tells me there is some higher state of awareness. There is some inner state of inner peace. which can be had by connecting with spiritual reality, and there are some practices by which you can do it. So over a period of time, those practices tend to become systematized. Okay, you do this like this, you do this like this, you do this like this. These are all meant to foster that higher awareness, foster the raising of our consciousness toward the spiritual level. But over a period of time, as this religion becomes codified, people tend to get caught in the externals. It becomes externalized. That means people start going through the motions of doing the practices, but they forget why they're doing the practice, or they neglect. And that's when religion starts becoming ritualistic. Religion starts becoming mechanical. Then what happens is spirituality is meant to be about improving. Improving is like improving our thoughts, changing our inner world. But when religion becomes externalized, it becomes about proving, not improving. Proving my God is better than your God. My faith is greater than your faith. And this is where it starts becoming not just divergent, but almost opponent. It goes in opposite directions. However, if we consider religion essentially to be a set of systematized practices. So, and whatever practices we follow to try to reach a spiritual level, that is our religion. So in that sense, we can say that we want to be spiritual, and religion is the way to be spiritual, is the path for becoming spiritual. Now somebody may say, I don't want to associate with this religion or that religion or something like that. That's fair enough. But the idea is the practices that enable us to rise to the spiritual level, they are called in certain traditions as religion. Now that word religion can acquire negative connotation. But ultimately religion, what is it? It is a set of practices. Now sometimes the practices may become so intricate that their connection with a higher state of awareness may be lost. You have to dress in this way, and you have to do this, and you have to cook in this way, and you have to do this. If the whole point of connecting them with a pathway to higher awareness is lost, then it just becomes very self-centered or self-obsessive. And then it gets lost. The purpose gets lost. So, this is something similar to like somebody is doing experiments, but they don't even know why they're doing experiments. Sometimes there is like a huge project with hundreds of thousands of people, and there's a lab assistant, lab technician. They're doing some experiment, but what is the theory? How exactly is this experiment contributing to the theory? They may not even know about it. And they're just doing certain things. Now, if somebody is using those experiments, then it could be of some use. But for that person, mix this, move this, touch this, watch this, note this. They may not even have understanding what is happening. So it's a set, experiments can become divorced from the bigger picture of the theory. So like that, religion can sometimes become divorced from the higher spiritual purpose. So the last point is, I'll keep it as brief as, can we have a harmony of both of them? Now, if we see, as I started with, both are the part of the human search for understanding. Then what we can do, we can use science to improve our outer world. And we can use spirituality to improve our inner world. Now Martin Luther King put his finger very astutely on how science and spirituality interact or fail to interact. He says that our scientific power has outrun our spiritual power. We have guided missiles and misguided men. So the idea is that our outer power has increased, but our inner power has not increased proportionately. And that can lead to a very dangerous situation. In fact, Carl Jung is a prominent psychologist, and he said that the more outer power we get, the more inner power we need. We need that inner power so that we can use that outer power properly. Technology is advancing enormously now. Now with AI coming up, how the future workspace will be, it's not very easily predictable. But the more outer power we get, in America, everybody has a legal right to have guns, even very advanced guns. The more outer power you get, the more inner power you need to be able to use that outer power properly. Now with social media, we are connected with anyone and everyone in the world. Now, if I have a mouthpiece, I can spread information or misinformation all over the world. Now, if I hear some gossip, gossip happens when two conditions meet. See, gossip happens when we hear something we like about someone we don't like.
Yes.
We hear something we like about someone we don't like. And then what happens is, in public interest, I'm going to tell this to everyone. This person pretends to be like this, but this is their dark reality. Now the gossip may be completely untrue. But if we have a social media account and we can reach a lot of people, now one gossip can spread rapidly and it can ruin a person's life. So technology has given a lot of power externally. The more outer power we get through technology, the more inner power we need through spirituality. Otherwise, we can very easily get lost. So, we always look for some entertainment. But now through technology, there's so much entertainment available that a person can spend their entire life merely in entertainment. So, do we want to waste our life like that? Now, humans always were looking for intoxication. That's just a way to escape. But now through technology, not only are we taking natural drugs, but we are chemically aggravating the effects of those drugs. And then, if we do not have inner discipline, then there can be an increasingly severe drug epidemic. It is there in America and many parts of the world. India also, in some states, is far more acute than others. So the more outer power we get, the more inner power we need. So that is where outer power technology is already providing us through science. Science and technology are providing us. Outer power we are getting, but inner power we need. So if we understand that both of these play a part in my life, so through scientific and technological growth, we can gain more outer power. Through spiritual growth, we can gain inner power. And if we can get both kinds of power, through science we can make the outer world better, through spirituality we can make our inner world better. If both our inner and outer world become better, see the inner world, often we use, we hope that there will be an era of peace and prosperity. Now, prosperity is about the outer world. Peace is about the inner world. So we can bring both science and spirituality together by recognizing that both dimensions of our life are important and both need to grow together. So Arjuna was a great archer. He had developed his external outer side. But through the knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita, he developed his internal side also. And thus he was able to attain a victory that actually ended up doing some substantial good for the world. And the same opportunity is there for us also. So I'll summarize. I discussed three main points. We're talking about science and spirituality and the relationship between them. So first we started with a broad understanding of the dynamics of their relationships. Then I focused on the similarities. The similarities is that science has theory and experiment, and spirituality has philosophy and practice. So there are similarities in the sense there is an intellectual component to it and there is a practical component to it. So that is similarity. And then we also discussed about how both have the idea that the visible is there, but the invisible is more important. Now this might seem counterintuitive in science, but we discussed how through various ideas, the laws are there which are more important in science, not just the raw facts or the raw observations. Then we talked about the whole idea of dark matter that is there. Then we also discussed that how in the history of science there is this tension between empiricism and rationalism. So which is more important? Rationalism focuses more on the invisible, the principles that organize the universe. So now that of course is a postulate of science, spirituality. The invisible reality is much more important than the visible. Then we talked about how the invisible impacts the visible. So in science it's through technology that we get tangible benefits. In spirituality, it is through our inner world getting improved. We talk about pragmatic spirituality. Say meditation has tangible benefits which people experience, people feel. So there is a tangible effect of pragmatic spirituality also. So we can say the result of it is wellness. So then we talked about the dissimilarities. So dissimilarity, primarily it was in the domain. So science is the study of matter and spirituality is the study of what matters. And in the idea of what matters, we went from things to thoughts. We discussed how although science has provided us comforts, but still unfortunately there are miseries. And that's why we are in the paradox of being comfortably miserable. Then we can go beyond the thoughts to the thinker. The thoughts don't just come from outer things, they come from the inner thinker. I talked about how the paradox of meditation doesn't really help people make meditation. Why? Because it's not just the outer stimuli that is producing those. There is a thinker inside. In this connection, I discussed how there is the world of science and the world we live in. The world we live in and for. These overlap, but there are significant divergent areas that we consider pain or taste or love. None of these can be measured. So these are very important for us. These are the world of experience. And this experience is something which spirituality says it can enhance. Spirituality can provide us a richer, a higher experience. So now spirituality can provide a better experience. So, but then here we discuss the difference between spirituality and religion. For many people, they may have had some negative experience with religion. They might have made some religious people are intolerant or they are very dogmatic. So we discuss about how they are different in the sense that while spirituality, the practice that is involved in spirituality, when it becomes codified, when it becomes systematized, it becomes religion. But sometimes when it is systematized, what happens over a period of time is it becomes externalized. And then it's like somebody doing an experiment without knowing why the experiment is doing. So spirituality, the focus is on improving. But in religion, the focus often becomes on proving. And that's where religion doesn't give us better experience. Religion actually leaves us with a bitter taste, a bad experience. But that is not intrinsic to religion. That is because the purpose of religions has been forgotten. The last part I talked about is the harmony. So it's not so much like what science teaches and what spirituality teaches, how to harmonize that. We're talking about how in our human search, how we can harmonize that. So science is providing us outer power through technology. Spirituality can provide us inner power. So we are having outer power to a phenomenal degree now. We all have our devices and the devices can cause vices. If we do not have inner power, we can get addicted to our devices. So the more outer power we have, either we can get completely distracted or we can develop inner power. So if both of them can come together, then outer power can bring prosperity,
Peace.
inner power can bring peace. And thus we can try to bring about a harmony at our individual level, and through that we can move towards a harmony at a collective level. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. So, do we have time for questions? Does anyone have any questions or comments?
Can you please elaborate more on meditation and what is actually the state of meditation, state of brain when we are meditating? Like, I don't know how to meditate basically.
Okay. So, what is meditation? You can talk about meditation in two broad dimensions of it. It is the state of mind. And then there is the focus of the mind. The two distinct aspects. That is, what is the mind focused on, and what state results in the mind because of the focus. So now when science studies meditation, it cannot study the focus of the mind. If somebody is chanting some mantras and they are focusing on the divine as they have conceived in their tradition, that focus of the mind is beyond the scope of science, isn't it? Now, whether that exists, whether it is real, that we can't perceive. So, but science can study the state of the mind. Okay, if this person is becoming peaceful, the areas of the brain which indicate peace, which indicate calmness, which indicate happiness, they are being activated. So now many people, so depending on the tradition that a person follows, the focus of the mind may be on different things. Some people practice silent meditation. So they just try to become silent. Some people practice meditation, sonic meditation, use some sound, or we use the Hare Krishna mantra. So the object of meditation may vary. So broadly speaking, meditation involves two states. Or if you focus on the state, two stages it involves. So if this is my consciousness, first the object of meditation that is there. Say if we are chanting a mantra. Now first we give entrance. Whatever my mind is, my consciousness is filled with 100 things. Oh, I have to do this work, I have to do that, I have to do that. But we give entrance. That means we let that particular sound enter into our mind. If we are doing this, it becomes one among many stimuli in our mind. But at least at the first stage. This is the stage, you can say, of attention. We consciously try to focus. But as we start focusing, what happens is, if this is my consciousness, that object of meditation that is there, that starts becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. So eventually, it's like that object of meditation, I realize it is far bigger than me. And then it is I gain entrance. I gain entrance into that higher reality. And that is the state of absorption. At the highest level, this is called as samadhi. So where in that state of absorption, we feel as if we are transported to a different place. We feel as if we are no longer where we are physically. So meditation begins with attention. Attention means we give entrance to the object of meditation. But as we keep giving attention, gradually that object starts becoming bigger, so that it becomes bigger than our consciousness. And then our consciousness becomes immersed in it, becomes sheltered in it, becomes absorbed in it. So now this journey from attention to absorption, this is the process of meditation. We start with attention and go towards absorption. Now when we do regular practice of meditation, then this journey starts becoming faster and easier. But it is not a linear journey. That is, there can be breaks, there can be disruptions, because sometimes we're not able to pay attention. We pay attention for some time, but we're not consistent. So it's not that while meditation is an experience we all can have, it is not literally like a linearly replicable scientific experiment, because our mind goes through many different states. But essentially, start with spending some time giving attention to a object that is connected with higher reality. So mantras are special spiritual sounds that are attuned to higher divine realities. So by that mantra, giving it entrance into our consciousness, gradually we gain entrance. And even if say if we are meditating for 15 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever time, even for a few moments, if we gain an experience that there is a bigger reality, and I am linked with that bigger reality, that can give us a sense of calmness that will last throughout the day. Some days that moment will last for a longer time, that moment of immersion. Some days it will just be for a few moments. But that doesn't matter. Just by practice, through attention, we can go towards absorption. Okay? Thank you.
Sir, can you please talk a bit about Purushartha?
About Purushartha.
It's not directly related.
Okay,
to
yeah.
But so sir, we always are. As students, we are confused because so we first think about getting a good job, which would give us good salary, so that we become secure, or should we think about creating new technology, which might not give us any financial gain in the short term, but we might end up creating something good for the general humanity. And that is where the idea of artha or karma comes in my understanding. So if you can please talk about that. Okay.
So, see, we are all meaning seekers. Sometimes it said we are pleasure seekers. But actually that's an oversimplification. We all want pleasure, but we want meaningful pleasure. And sometimes people ask, why are young people or why are people spending so much time on their devices? Actually, the question we should be asking is, when the devices have so many entertaining things, why are people not spending all their time on devices? Isn't it? When there is so much easy pleasure available, why is anybody doing anything other than seeking that pleasure? Because pleasure is not enough for us. We want something meaningful. Just watching this TikTok, watching this Instagram reel, or watching this YouTube short, or clicking on this, like, dislike, comment. No, that doesn't have meaning. So we are pleasure seekers, but more than that, we are meaning seekers. And meaning is what refers to artha. So Purush Artha is for a human being, what is the source of meaning? So now artha, it is like a ladder. We all, so for a small child, the artha, the meaning is, I want my mother's milk. As a child grows, I want toys. And as a child grows further, I want to be better than other kids at sports. Child grows further, okay, I want to study and get good marks. So our conception of artha also keeps rising upwards. So yes, initially somebody may seek wealth. So broadly speaking, if you consider artha and kama, so now artha can refer at one level to meaning at a generic level. Now within the four purusharthas, artha and kama, here artha refers to wealth. Now wealth is also a source of meaning for people. When say for many people, their self-esteem, their self-worth is connected with their net worth. So now our net worth should not be the sole basis of our self-worth, but it is related. So artha, in the sense of money, is also a source of artha, meaning for us. Now kama can refer to desire. Desire is generally for pleasure. Now we could say that we seek artha for kama. We seek wealth so that we can get pleasure. But wealth can be seen as resources and they can be used for various purposes, and pleasure can be got in different ways. So the idea is that kama broadly means satisfaction of desire. So somebody can use artha to just get a big house and live a life of luxury. And that's how they try to fulfill their kama. Somebody else can use artha, okay, I want to create a charitable charity. I want to take care of people. And their kama, they try to satisfy in that way. So kama can be seen as lust, but kama can be broadly seen as desire. And which desire is that's why I talked about. See, artha is the standard of living. Kama is the standard of longing. If my kama is my desires are very self-centered, then I'm always looking for more to get from the world. That will always keep me in a state of dissatisfaction. So, on the other hand, if my kama, my desire could be that I get things. It could be by possession, it could be for gratification, or my karma could be for contribution. I want to make a difference. I want to contribute to others' lives, to add some value. So our karma can also get gradually elevated. So for us, when we are seeking purushartha, we are seeking meaning in our life. So generally, meaning, it can be at a spiritual level and it can be at a material level. At a spiritual level, the meaning comes through our connection with the divine, with the spiritual, ultimately with the divine. That for us, as we slowly and steadily start connecting with the divine, we understand that, yes, I don't need all the things of the world for my own satisfaction, for making myself to feel good. I can get a sense of innate satisfaction. And then our material sense of meaning, it can best come through contribution. See, if somebody is a doctor, a medicine can be a noble profession. But if a doctor is in that profession primarily for making money, now of course they spend a lot of money, they put a lot of effort, for getting the education, they will want money. But if a doctor has only the value is only possession and no contribution, and I want money but I don't care for the patients, then that such a doctor will be actually a dangerous person, isn't it? So over a period of time, it is that we can actually, if we are not internally needy, then we can contribute. If we are internally needy, then what will happen is we will be always concerned about what I am getting. Possession will be our focus. That's why the spiritual and material artha, or the meaning that we seek, they don't have to go in opposite direction. In fact, if we have a strong spiritual grounding, we are internally satisfied, then what we do in the outer world can be more in a mood of contribution. Then I can do things that make a difference even if they are not necessarily going to get me recognition or remuneration in a huge way. But if I don't have that spiritual satisfaction within, then whatever I do, it will be with a very strong craving for recognition, for remuneration, and the contribution will get minimized. So we spend a certain amount of time on our spiritual growth through practices like meditation, and then with that grounding, with that steadiness that we get, then we can explore outwards. What are the abilities that I have? What are the interests that I have? And how can I start making contribution in the areas? That will become clearer. Most people think that I should get outer meaning and then I'll look for inner meaning. It can happen, but it's an unnecessary troublesome journey. Because once you start seeking outer pleasure or outer meaning alone, it just becomes like an endless thing. Nothing external can fill an inner vacuum. So that's why people who start with good intentions also, sometimes they end up becoming possessive and manipulative. There's a social critic, he said that every noble cause, it starts as it's okay. Or in 3 stages, he says it starts as something like a charity. Then it becomes a business, and then it becomes a racket. So now this doesn't have to happen, but it can happen if a person who is doing this, they may have good intentions, but if they do not have inner spiritual foundation, then their good intentions will get sabotaged, will get subverted. Okay, thank you. Good question. So last question. Okay, yeah, please.
In the section where you were telling that science also has to be based upon faith, that if you
I want to say based on, that is, faith has a significant role in science. So,
but in science itself, we have two empiric and rational. These ideas are there. In the empiric, we can say that we use our senses and they may not be trustworthy. But in rational, we can say that they are all based upon math and logic and things like that, which are not so much based upon senses. Like 1 + 1 will always be 2 only.
yeah,
That's whichever way we perceive it.
okay.
So in that sense, if we say empirical is itself based upon senses, we can say it may be false or it may be unreliable. But in case of rationalism, people can say that it's not based upon senses. It is like
Based on faith.
Yeah.
It's possible, but there are some serious questions about rationalism also. That how much does a theory have to ultimately relate with reality as we experience it? Isn't it? As again, Einstein has said something like this: that the more a theory is mathematically either sound or beautiful or rigorous or whatever, the more a theory is mathematically sound, the less it becomes connected with reality as we experience it. The more this theory is connected with reality, the less it remains mathematically sound. Now, what he meant by that is that, at least this is how I understand it, is that mathematics, in real life, there are many things which correlate with mathematics, and that's amazing. The extent of things in real life is correlated with mathematics. But there are a lot of things that do not correlate with mathematics. So, there's much of the reality that we have, like we talk about emotions, they're not quantifiable. They're an important part of our life. So, when you talk about a rationality in logic, there's a valid argument, and the words used are different arguments. There's a sound argument. Sound, or sometimes an argument can be valid. Valid means that from point A to point B, it's a logical step. It's considered right argument. But for the argument to be sound, or you can use the word true, A has to be true. If A, then B. So the link between A and B is what is established by logic. So that link may be valid. But whether A itself is valid, that is a question. So rationality involves some theorizing which is based on a correlation between cause and effect, between point A and point B. A law, what is essentially a law? A law is basically a link between, say, action, between cause and effect. But this linking between cause and effect, this itself requires some starting conditions. So if those starting conditions are not there, then will that particular cause effect connection work? So like when you talk about uniformism, that is a theory. The theory is based on faith. That what I observe over here is true over here will be true everywhere else. So if that particular starting assumption condition is there, then it's true. But if that starting condition is not there, then so irrationalism also requires faith. Because when we make a rational argument, we are postulating a link between cause and effect. But we are assuming that the cause is in a particular starting condition at that particular point. Do we really know that? That is an article of faith, which may be valid or it may not be valid. There are other ways in which rationalism also requires faith. But the point is that science ultimately is not only rational. So even if you were to argue that the element of faith is only in the empirical aspect, because science involves the empirical undoubtedly. So faith is involved in science. But there is no science which is totally rational and without any empirical element at all. Thank you. So, you want to add anything?
Yeah, thank you.
So thank you so much for your participation. Hare Krishna.